Well, I can't believe I'm into week 4 of my podcast already. And instead of discussing another book or new material, I figure I'll do a little recap and tie together some of the ideas we discussed in previous episodes, one of the 3 previous episodes. And we could start to develop some sort of cohesive framework that we could continue to build on in the weeks and months to come. So if this is the first episode you're listening to, welcome. This is the Construction Trades Leadership Podcast, and I'm your host, Brad Anderson. If this is where you happen to jump in, check out our previous ones, or if we have newer ones, check out those as well, and most likely to be better and better each week, and hopefully continue to improve. Well, not just hopefully, I'm going to continue to improve and provide all of you guys with better material and better presentation as time goes on. But this all brings us to where we started here, and it was a getting started mindset. And so it's the mindset we have if you're getting ready to start a new job, new position, start a business, start a podcast. There's always these roadblocks in your mind that you're not good enough yet, you don't look polished, finished material, in the case of podcast, but getting started and finding something to build on is important. And one thing we didn't discuss in that first episode was the idea of something like imposter syndrome, where you feel like a fraud or an imposter that will be found out. But the good thing to know is, if you're feeling that way and you're putting yourself, it means you're putting yourself in challenging situations where you're going to grow as a person. And it's completely natural and normal. And most people who get themselves involved in bigger and bigger things will feel this at some point and many points in their lives. And kind of reminds me of a note on this. I came across a video from Lewis Howes. If you don't know who he is, I would recommend checking out his podcast or YouTube show, The School of Greatness. And he was discussing how he started his whole journey simply as an exercise to get him over certain fears. And it ended up becoming his life's work. Now he's a very successful podcast, amazing guests, and lots of viewers and listeners, and but it really just grew because he got started, even though he was afraid to do, or to overcome fears. Then next thing I noticed this past week also, I was looking through one of my notebooks, and I had made a note of a podcast, one of his podcasts, where he was discussing the same thing like 10 months ago. So it's just kind of like serendipitous that I came across the same thing twice in a week, one directly from his Instagram page and one from my own notebook, making notes about something I saw that was important when I came across one of his videos. So don't be afraid to start something, even if it scares you. Whatever it is, whether it be professional endeavor, something personal, something fun, if you don't get started, you'll never know what it even takes to get better, and that's the big point. So with me, this is just getting. Good thing is, I'm just getting it's part of my normal Sunday routine now. I was putting some notes together, working on this a little bit, and as I get better and better, again, we'll have a better finished product with you, maybe with some fancy graphics at the start, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, or some music to start and introduction stuff if you're listening to it. But let's get around to our first part of the topic. The first week we discussed second week we discussed Turn This Ship Around by David Marquet, and the third week we discussed Extreme Ownership. And I'd like to tie those into each other, some of the themes from both of them together. Now, while they're both military books, and specifically Navy books, Navy submarine and Navy SEALs, they do have a decidedly different feel. The military examples from Extreme Ownership take place in a combat situation in a dangerous and intense and volatile war zone, and the examples used by Captain David Marquet are mostly peacetime, but it's important to remember their environment on a nuclear submarine, which is hostile, deep in the water, and deep ocean, high pressure, no one else around to help. And it also holds nuclear warheads and a nuclear reactor. So proper attention to detail and proper performance are just as important, even in peacetime. And while the principles on the surface, sometimes leadership principles on the surface may seem like they're soft and emotional, but they're actually about your organization and you and your team and everyone working, getting the highest performance for yourselves and your whole organization. So brings me to the first one we're going to discuss from the two books, and just tying them together, is the No Bad Teams, Only Bad Leaders from Extreme Ownership. This theme is, of course, played out in the entirety of Turn This Ship Around, where the USS Santa Fe was a poor performing sub, in fact, the laughingstock of the U.S. submarine fleet. But under David Marquet's leadership, and more importantly, the leadership of his crew members, once they were given the opportunity and authority to be leaders themselves and taught these leadership skills, they became the top performing sub in the entire U.S. sub fleet by all metrics. And it just kind of ties back to another example from Extreme Ownership, where I think it was Leif Babin who was telling this story about the boat team where they carry the rubber rafts above them in training. And in their training groups across the beach and over obstacles into the water, like that, they swapped the leaders out from the worst boat to the top performing boat, and with that leadership change, the worst performing boat became the top performing boat. And so I like this one because it means a lot to me. In my organization, we ended up with a leadership vacuum, and performance started to suffer. A lot of our field leaders were older and they retired all in a short period of time, and no one was really taught any way to fill their shoes. My father, who was the only owner at the time and the boss at the time, had mostly a top-down approach with managing, other than with a few guys who were the more experienced field leaders who ended up all retiring within a pretty short period of time. But no one else had really been taught any sort of leadership skills. And I had not really learned any specific leadership skills or the importance of teaching those leadership skills to others. So I started having to learn them when I saw this, and in order to make things effective. While we changed our structure, ended up selling to a larger firm, I still manage the organization and have begun implementing a lot of these leadership skills and trainings that I had to go out and learn on my own, and actively teaching these younger guys to become leaders. And I've noticed a dramatic improvement with largely the same crew. So it's not the people, it's the leadership. And I guess there was a point where that was falling on me. I was the bad leadership. Of course, I had not been taught, but I took it upon myself to start learning these things and teaching them to others, and things can improve. So by learning leadership skills, by learning different methods to implement them, and by training your teams how to do them, you can improve a lot in your organization. So that's really what got me started in this whole leadership journey, and trying to share this journey with you to help you improve, whether it be your team on a construction site, your whole organization, or just yourself to become a better leader for yourself in your personal life. So next, we're just going to discuss the leader model that guided Captain David Marquet's entire leadership philosophy. It's the same, essentially, principle as discussed in Extreme Ownership as decentralized command. And by giving up control and having leaders at all levels, people become better decision makers and become more accountable at all levels. Also, Extreme Ownership discusses how generally human beings can't directly lead more than 6 to 10 people. So even in combat situations where a much larger number of troops in the conflict, they are broken down to smaller groups of 6 to 10 members, and the leaders of these groups are in turn led directly above them by leaders who are also in charge of 6 to 10 people who lead the small groups and up the chain. And this concept's nothing new. Ancient military organizations, at least the effective ones, were organized into groups like this. The famed Roman legions were broken down the same way, down to the centurions who commanded 100 men, and those 100 men were broken down into groups of 10. The Romans loved the decimal system, 10 groups of 10. And then, even the Mongols and Genghis Khan were organized from the tops of each commander directly in charge of 10 and the groups immediately below them. And this had a dramatic effect on the battlefields. They conquered the whole world with organizations like this, with 100,000 nomadic horse riders, but all dropped down to groups of 10 because no one's commanding 100,000 people directly, even if it's someone with the charisma and everything of Genghis Khan. The having organizational structure in your organization or in your work crew, at work, anywhere, is important, and it shouldn't be haphazard. It should be structured. It can change a little bit here and there, when people go to a different job site or when people are doing different tasks. But having some sort of structure where people are accountable to themselves and people above them are accountable for group spawning. Just having it all amorphous isn't really a good plan. So the next one we'll discuss is Eliminating Organizational Roadblocks by David Marquet, and this really incorporates the concept of leading up and down the chain of command that's discussed in Extreme Ownership. And really, up the chain of command is kind of the part we're discussing today, and it's something I'm working on. I actually have a meeting with my bosses about that this week. But it's necessary to give a clear picture with your higher ups to make sure they have the full picture and have the necessary knowledge to make decisions and provide good leadership decisions at their level. They're not mind readers, they can't know everything, so if you don't inform them of the problems, even if the problems that are bothering you specifically, I know I have a lot of guys come to me and say, I don't really want to talk about it, but okay, if it's been bugging you this amount of time, you have to bring it up because otherwise we don't know about it. And usually these things can be worked through. But it's easier to just be sitting and brooding about something, or wondering why there's no leadership above you. But if you're not taking the steps to be a leader to your leaders, then nothing will ever get resolved. And at least if you give it a shot, then you did your part in trying to get this resolved. So you can try to remove the roadblocks for your team to move forward and perform at a high performance level. So I guess that's a good place to stop for today. We're getting close to 15 minutes. Try to keep them around there for right now. We'll be back next week, some more material, and we'll keep adding to our collective knowledge. And soon we'll have some guests too, hopefully. Well, we definitely I'll get guests for you guys, which should make things more interesting, as you won't just be listening to me talk and ramble on, and if it sounds like rambling. And we get some other people's perspectives, other stories, and really continue to learn and develop our work on our leadership journeys here together. And don't forget to check out constructiontradeleaders.com for some leadership and course materials. And see you guys next week in episode 5. Thank you.